Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Perrie the Pulverizer. So Perrie, unlike what his name suggests, doesn't parry anything, he just pulverizes. He's a 4-mana Bant commander, a 3/3, and he says when he enters, you put a shield counter on target creature, which is if the creature would be destroyed, instead you remove the shield counter from it. And whenever he attacks, target creature you control gains trample and +X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control. So the main thing here is we want to use this as a Voltron commander. We're going to put the shield counter on Perrie, and Perrie's going to pump himself. So the main issue here is going to be how do we get a lot of different kinds of counters? So some are pretty obvious, like +1 counter, we can probably find stuff that adds +1 counters. Shield counter, Perrie already supplies that. But then we need to find as many different kinds of counters as we can get. So from here, I'm going to go through the rest of the deck and I'll highlight cards that happen to have different kinds of counters in their category. So we'll start off with some of this. So Beatdown Duelist's Heritage gives double strike to Perrie the Pulverizer. Luminarch Ascension gets quest counters and can be another way of just generating additional creatures to beat down our opponents. Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel is effectively a looting spell, but it gets chorus counters. Palantir of Orthanc is a filtering spell because it scries and then can maybe draw cards or beat down our opponents, and it gets influence counters, so that's another type of counter. Falco Spara initially also gets a shield counter, and it's good because you can remove counters from things to impulse draw the top of your library, essentially. Fornox has vanishing counters, and at the beginning of your pre-combat main, you draw a card. So overall, throughout the game, assuming that you get to take 4 turns after this, you'll get to draw 4 cards in total. And all the while it's in play, it has a vanishing counter for Perrie. Also, of course, Planeswalkers have loyalty counters on them, so it behooves us to play some Planeswalkers. That's one of the reasons that Garruk is here. The other reason is because we can -3 it after Perrie gets pumped and draw a lot of cards. Hutzel, another way to draw cards because Perrie pumps itself or something else, and therefore we have a creature with a power and toughness higher than the base. Number of other card draw spells. We also get access to Staff of the Storyteller, which has a story counter on it. And then we get the One Ring, which we would normally play anyway, but it has burden counters. And Tome of Legends gets page counters and is yet another way of drawing cards. Then we've got Devoted Druid, which has -1 counters. So this is a way to ramp and also have counters. And then we can just combine this with Luxior. That's easy enough. Also, Luxior pairs actually somewhat well with our commander because it gives the equipped creature +1 for each counter on it. Then we have a few counter spells. We've got a bunch of lands, including Llanowar Reborn, which has Graft. So this is one of the ways that we can just have a land that has a counter on it. So +1/+1 counter here. We also have Trenzalore Clock Tower, which is just a mono blue land that taps and puts a time counter on itself. That's another way of having a land with a counter. And of course, Urza's Saga, being a saga, has lore counters. Then we have our protection. So obviously we don't want Perrie to get countered or killed. So this is just a number of different protections. And then of course, the Fairy Time Raveler is a planeswalker, so it has loyalty counters. Then we've got our ramp, and a number of ramp cards happen to also just have counters on them. So Armored Scrap Gorger has oil counters. Astral Cornucopia with the charge counters. Biophagus puts +1 counters on any creature that it winds up casting. Everflowing Chalice gets charge counters as well. Foreboding Statue, another thing that taps and gets omen counters. Gatewatch Beacon is another 3-mana ramp spell that gets loyalty counters, surprisingly. And then we can move those counters onto Planeswalkers. Hourglass of the Lost also gets time counters, as does Midnight Clock with the hour counters. Replicating Ring gets night counters. Witching Doll, nest counters, and Wall of Roots -0, -1 counters. So while definitely some cards overlap with the same kind of counters, there's a lot of diversity here. And we've got some removal, including Oko, because again, we do want more Planeswalkers, so we've played a couple of the best Planeswalkers we can play. Then we've got some stacks cards. We are playing a Voltron commander that's mainly based on just pumping Perrie a whole bunch and then attacking people. And then we have Dreamtide Whale, which has vanishing but also proliferates. And then Quest for Renewal as yet another quest that can get the quest counters and is also good for just untapping our stuff. And so with all that said, that is going to do it for Perrie the Pulverizer in EDH.